We're 100% sure this morning's guest will be here because after 25 years, he's never missed a day on the job. Meet him coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at Advanced Audiology and Hearing Aid Center off of Highway 17 at 6th Avenue South, across from the main post office in North Myrtle Beach. We're focused on Dick Elliott, Part 2, and we're with the man himself. Good morning, Senator Dick Elliott of District 28. Thanks so much for coming back in. It was great being with you yesterday.
Delighted to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, the real thrill for us, of course, the excitement for viewers of Fox TV, particularly our viewers in Marlborough County and Dillon County and Marion, is the opportunity to see you on air here. But we were talking a little about yesterday about the district. It is a big district, isn't it?
It's one of the largest, broadest districts in South Carolina, but it has some wonderful people in it that have a different lifestyle, different background, a lot of diversity. And it's a very interesting district and very interesting people to serve, and I'm just so honored to serve in these 4 counties.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course, having grown up, you shared with us yesterday in Kershaw County and having involvement with farming and otherwise and small business up there, the excitement of serving a district where much of what you know here in North Myrtle Beach and obviously your beach rental company, which you'd kicked off in 1959. It was amazing hearing you talk about that, but also serving a rural area is something you can do well.
Well, rural Horry County is not too much different from Marion County, Dillon, and Marlborough. So I've served in the House that covered a lot of rural Horry County, and throughout my Senate career, it's also included a good portion of rural Horry County. So when you cross the county line, you're still in a different county, but you have the same problems in those communities that you have in Upper Horry County.
Tomorrow we're going to be visiting with State Representative Tracy Edge from here, District 104, right here in North Myrtle Beach. You know, when we think about issues for the State House, where there's 126 of them traveling around the state Senate, there's a lot of big issues, but that oftentimes overlaps with 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 House members. Do you work in tandem pretty well, or even across the party lines with other representatives that cover part of your Senate district?
We do. In fact, we have a wonderful group of House members in all of the 4 counties that we work with. We've got some good folks, conscientious folks, committed people, trying to do the very best that they can. They're really good to work with. And to me, it makes no difference whether they're Democrat, Republicans, or Independents, or whatever they may call themselves. And you have to work like that. Because in a political body like the state Senate, the name of the game is getting the majority plus 1 vote to either kill a bad piece of legislation or either pass a good piece of legislation. So you don't ask people in the Senate whether you're Democrat or Republican or something else. You simply try to work with them to get a consensus, to get a majority. And it's the same thing working with people on community needs back in the House and Senate here. It makes no difference to me whether my colleague is a Republican or Democrat. I'm going to work with them to the very best of my ability on each issue in each county in every way that I can.
Those words ring true. I remember hearing Terry Cooper down on the south end talking about all that mattered was knowing how to count, knowing 6 votes or 7 votes or whatever it was just knowing how to count, not to get unanimity or the entire vote on every issue, but just knowing how to get that 6 votes, as you said, the majority or the equal amount plus 1, and that's critical.
No question about it, and it is a numbers game. And in order to be successful, you have to know how to work with people from all backgrounds and walks of life. And that's a success, that kind of endeavor that you must engage in order to be successful in getting the numbers in Columbia.
In addition to being a numbers game, seniority really comes into play. And obviously your service, the 10 years in the House, but now the 15 years in the State Senate, seniority is a big deal.
In the House side, after serving 10 years, at that point I had decided to not be involved in politics anymore. I served 8 of the 10 years on the House side on the Ways and Means Committee, where the state budget by Constitution is first adopted. Then REMAP came along in 1992, and Horry County had about 55% of the Senate district. And while I had publicly announced that I was not running for the House again, people said, "Dick, you have experience. Why don't you run for the Senate seat? You can help not only Horry County, but the other counties that's going to need a strong voice. Somebody has some experience to get off the bus running and serving well." So I was talked into running for the Senate. Now the Senate is driven totally by seniority, unlike the House. In the House, if you get along with the Speaker well, then you can get on certain committees, as I did. I served on the a board with the Speaker of the House at the time in 1983,
right.
and shortly he put me on the Ways and Means Committee. But on the Senate, you wait a time with patience. I'm next in line to go to the Senate Finance Committee, strictly by seniority. As a business person, I've been impatient to get there. But that's the way the system, I don't like it, but that's the way the systems work.
Right.
The good thing about being on the Senate Finance Committee, this part of the state has been shortchanged from return back from our investment in Columbia. With a seat on the Senate Finance Committee, we can help change that. We've only had 3 years Senate Finance service by a resident senator of Horry County since 1930. Only 3 years of service.
In 77 years.
In 77 years, we've had 3 years service, and that speaks volumes of why we've had to struggle to get a fair shake out of Columbia. Hopefully, in the next term of office, 3 senators more senior than I am on the Finance Committee have already announced they're not running again, so that will automatically give us a slot from Horry County and the other counties that serve, a seat on the Senate Finance Committee. I can tell you, Greg, unless you're around that table where the pie is being cut, you're going to have to sometimes negotiate the best you can with other members on the committee and take the crumbs after they cut the pie they want.
Boy, Dick, is it really that? I mean, you know, obviously that sounds a little scary almost. You know, for folks who are sitting at home, we want to make sure they understand you can still do quite a bit even if you're not on. For the 23 senators that are not on the Senate Finance Committee, you can still make a big impact.
You can make a big impact, and particularly from a county that generates about 12.5% of the state's sales tax, about 11% of the state's entire budget, having about 4.5% of the state's population. So you can see how much additional money we send to Columbia.
Wow.
That's unspoken for when it comes to returning back to Horry County. So we've got our work cut out for us, but we paid the price now with time and involvement, and hopefully we can help make the difference in some small way in the next session.
Well, I think that's something that all of our viewers in all 6 of the South Carolina counties, or even plus Georgetown and Chesterfield and the other counties, would be interested in seeing Horry get a bigger share, a more fair share. Will you repeat those numbers again? The 12, 11, and 4%. It's 12% of the state sales tax comes out of Horry.
That's correct, and about 11% of the total budget comes from Horry.
Is that right? 11% of the total state budget comes out of Horry County,
and with a population of about 4.5% of the state's population.
But that 11% figure is so critical.
It's awesome because that's the general fund. What's happening? We're helping fund programs and needs for the rest of the state.
Right.
While generally Horry County is paying our own way plus.
That is incredible. Thank you for sharing those numbers, because it is important that viewers, if someone wanted to learn more about you, Dick, and sorry we didn't talk about this yesterday, but if someone wanted to learn more about you, have a chance to contact you in Columbia to talk about needs in their area, whether they're in your district itself or outside of the district. Obviously, you serve a very important part of the state, but as well as all constituents, I'm sure, statewide. What's the best way to reach you?
By telephone.
Okay, good.
That number is 249.
Right.
1449.
Great.
Email address, Senate email address is DE at South Carolina Senate, scsenate.org.
Okay, good.
They can get me by mail, Box 3200, North Myrtle Beach.
Great.
So by phone, by email.
That's fantastic.
Or by U.S. mail.
Right across the street there, absolutely. It's good to be close at hand. 843-249-1449.
That's correct.
Okay, that's great. Or de@scsenate.org.
That's correct.
That's wonderful. You know, we think about so many ways, and obviously reaching out for constituents to want to get in touch with their persons. You know, whether it's Tracy, who'll be with us tomorrow, yourself, surely the needs of the constituency really stands out in people's minds.
That's what elective office is all about, serving, and serving well. Mm-hmm. Make a commitment to do your job, and if you aren't committed to doing your job, you shouldn't be there. So it's public service to help people when they come to you. Just this past week, I'll tell you a little interesting story.
Yeah.
A family had a difficult problem. They came to me, and I worked with them almost 3 hours. Trying to help them resolve the problem, getting them through all the hoops. At the end of the conversation, when we had helped them get over the bump in the road, they turned to me and said, "Dick, are you a Democrat or Republican?" I looked at them and I said, "Does it really matter? We sat here for the better portion of 3 hours. I haven't asked you at all whether you were Democrat or Republican.
Right.
I could care less. You came for service. I've done the best I could to help you, and we helped you solve the problem." So I don't put a lot of emphasis on partisan politics. I put a great deal of emphasis on service. And that's the name of the game. If you aren't committed to service, you shouldn't hold any elective office.
That's tremendous, Dick. That's tremendous. When we think about that, of course, you were talking about the Senate Finance Committee and the importance of getting on there. So it has nothing to do with, it's all about seniority. It has nothing to do with political party there.
Has nothing to do with party. It's totally driven by seniority.
The chairmanship, though, would be determined by party there.
The chairmanship would be
right. Sure, that's the one component of it that would be determined by party.
And if you have a majority of the Senate that's Republican, obviously your committees are going to be weighted so you'll have a Republican chairman.
Sure.
Those committees.
You know, it's just fascinating to think about, folks, and of course, whether it's Luke Rankin, who's held service, been in the state Senate for quite a while, that neither of you all have had that opportunity to get on the Finance Committee if it has such an important role. And you'd think with all the dollars that are coming out of ORRI, they would want to open, but if it's dependent on seniority, I guess they just have to work through those mechanics.
Over the years, we had one senator at one point in time that served 21 years, Senator Stevens from Loris.
Right.
He was an attorney. He didn't want to go to the Finance Committee. The rules of the Senate say if you serve on the Judiciary Committee, you cannot serve on the Finance Committee. You cannot serve on both at the same time. His desire was to continue service on the Judiciary Committee as an attorney. And so for those 21 years, we had no one to serve, even though he could have, at that time, by seniority, gone to the Senate Finance.
So even though you're on Judiciary now, you will open, if the door is opened to get on the Finance Committee, you'll move on over there.
I'll move in a heartbeat, yes.
That's great. That's great for our area.
As a businessman, if I don't really like the seniority system. I'm not an attorney, but that's the option, either on the Judiciary Committee or you on the Finance. As a businessman, then I should be, when I went to Columbia, if you sort out where my best capabilities were and are, they would be in the business end of it, and that's the state budget that I have 8 years experience from carrying over from the House side that deals with the same state budget. So I look forward to going over to the Senate Finance Committee. I look forward to get in there and work with Senator Hugh Leatherman, the chairman, and other people. Many of them are great friends of mine.
Right, sure.
And we have to work through them now, but I look forward to being around the table with them.
Oh, yeah.
And snuggling up and say, fellas, we got a job to do.
Right.
Let's do it fairly, let's do it honestly, and let's move on
and
cut that pie.
Those are great words. You know, we think about, obviously, there's so much that has to happen there in Columbia to make an impact on the entire state. What are some of the other big issues that are facing folks, our viewers right now, Dick?
Greg, one of the most difficult crises that this area, the coastal area, has faced in the last decade is the insurance crisis. In August of 2006, we sponsored an insurance forum in Myrtle Beach for the convenience of everyone along the Grand Strand. And we had almost 1,200 people in attendance at that meeting. And from that meeting with Eleanor Kitzman, the insurance director at the time, she really got an earful. Members of the delegation all were there. They got an earful. We had asked the chairman of the Senate Banking and Insurance Committee, who has to deal with insurance matters, to come from Greenville. He drove from Greenville down that afternoon.
Wow.
After the meeting, he drove back to Greenville. That showed the kind of interest we had told him. That the problem, how deep the problem was that we had advised him of. He came down to hear from those folks, as we did. We had members of the House Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee that also deals with those insurance matters on the House side. We had all the key people around the table that needed to hear from the consumer. Last year, we passed a major reform bill on insurance. We tried to make it a bill driven as much as we could by the competitive marketplace.
Right.
And there's a couple of things that we failed to get into that piece of legislation I would like to see. One of them is elect an insurance commissioner. If we're really going to ever have a consumer advocate in the insurance commissioner's office, then the people, in my opinion, should vote for that commissioner. North Carolina and Florida, they've had a whole lot more hurricanes than we've had, have cheaper insurance rates. And one thing that they have, we don't have, they have an elected insurance commissioner. Another thing that we didn't get in that bill that we need to go back and revisit is look at not allowing insurance companies to cherry pick. That is to take coverage that offers the least amount of risk. Allstate, for instance, at one swoosh, canceled 12,000 policies.
12,000?
In 2006. State Farm and other companies were canceling out. We did get the wind pool line moved in Horry County, which helped some. The progress that we made on that insurance legislation has been substantial, but we still have work to do. In addition, unless we allow insurance companies to charge us along the coastal area for losses in New Orleans through Katrina, Florida hurricanes, North Carolina, we need to develop an catastrophic insurance model that fits South Carolina, rather than allow these companies to come in and then charge what they like, because they have a perception of the model. In my judgment, that model should be developed by the insurance commissioner, bring in the best professionals we can assemble.
I love it.
On behalf of the consumer. His office should also be around that table as that catastrophic model is developed. We should also involve the insurance companies around the table, bring in their professionals in that arena.
Right.
When the model is completed, then it will have a great deal of credibility. All will have confidence in it that it fits South Carolina, and our rates then can be keyed off of that catastrophic insurance model. And we'll be assured that we will not be paying for losses in other states, in other areas.
Well, you are very knowledgeable on this subject, Senator Elliott. I mean, I'm amazed that because it has a dramatic impact on all of us in this area, but it truly impacts the rest of the state when you talked about the 11% of the state budget coming out of Horry County alone.
Well, not only that, in this business, you have to, track a lot of fields, a lot of numbers, and a lot of activities. Let me return just briefly to the insurance question. Part of the bill that we passed that I failed to mention was it gives you as a homeowner the opportunity to retrofit your home, and you get tax credits for the improvements you made for that home. So it gives you a good opportunity to have your cake and eat it too. You can spend your dollars and get tax credits for it. In addition, the bill also allows you to create a savings pool with tax credits to pay for any deductible that may be attached to your policy. So we've looked at the crisis we were in, and at this point, we've done the very best job, legislative-wise, that we can do. And I give all of the Horry delegates and Senator McConnell out of Charleston, Senator Thomas out of Greenville, Chairman of the Bankers and Insurance Committee, and the House LCI committee for all their efforts to sort of package this thing and do the very best job we could do.
We've got about 5 more minutes, Dick. When we think about education, that's a big on your list. And I know, obviously, talking to one of your children, education is very high on her daddy's mind. And that's been a big issue that impacts a lot of folks, particularly in our area and in our viewing area. As you know, we talked about Senator Leatherman a little bit ago and the impact Francis Marion and Florence Arlington Tech have made on the area. But down here, surely Coastal Carolina University and Horry Georgetown Tech, Webster, and so many others are really making an impact.
Education is a primary concern of mine. It should be a primary concern of all of those that are involved in creating a better world and a better future for our children. Last year, education, health care received some of the major emphasis on the new state dollars that we had and increases in budget. We also funded the EFA formula, which is state's contribution to counties, at the figure of $2,376 per student. That's the highest level it's ever been in South Carolina, which recognizes we put education first. In higher education, we put in $77 million additional dollars to help parents with students in college to keep the tuition from going even higher than it is today. We've also tried to do something for school buses. We put in $30 million to purchase new school buses on a 14-year rotating basis. We had to put in $10 million additional new dollars to buy gas because the gasoline prices have gone out of sight, and that's another long story that gets deep in my craw.
That it is for a guy who drives 3 hours to work. Yeah.
Well, for the general public, we feel like that with very little competition out there, maybe a little price gouging going on here and there.
Right, no touch
and
that.
particularly when you see ExxonMobil having the highest level of profits in the history of any country, company in the history of this nation or world for that matter. So we have reason to believe that maybe something's amiss out there that we can't control. But education, health care, we pumped in $74 million in new health care. And what that means is the federal government matches our Medicaid dollars 3 for 1. So we put in, for quick computation arithmetic, round figure 70. Multiply that by 4, you got $280 million in new funds for health care in South Carolina, which is a critical need in a lot of families. Unfortunately, in this country, 9 million babies go to bed every night with no insurance coverage. Some 49 million Americans have no insurance coverage. And we, at some point in time, in some way, we have that problem we must address. It's a federal problem. We'll do what we can at the state, providing funds for those that don't have any coverage. But it's a real crisis, not only here, but across the nation.
There's so many federal issues that impact on a statewide level. You know, Senator Clary talked a lot about immigration as a big issue, and of course a lot of the Herald just last week had a big, the editor had highlighted some immigration. That's a big issue. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. You know, I wanted to think about, you talked about yourself as a businessman so much, Dick. We didn't have a chance to really highlight what has happened to Elliott Beach Rentals from 1959. It's turned into quite a bit more than just beach rentals.
I'll give my son a lot of credit for that because he's taken that company to levels that I could only dream about. So I'll give my oldest son, Rick, a lot of credit for that. He's done a great job. Let me just, if I could take 15 seconds on immigration. South Carolina is a state of least resistance to illegal immigrants. The governor can, by executive order, we passed a resolution last year asking the governor to use his executive order that he controls his cabinet in DSS to not allow illegal aliens to have access to DSS services and others, because we've become the state of least resistance. We just pour it out, and we have too many legal residents that need that assistance. But so far, we haven't been able to get the governor to release that or make that executive order release.
Ocean Drive City Council, Horry County Council, the State House, the State Senate. If you hadn't run for office the first time way back then, Dick, what do you think you'd be doing full-time now?
I probably would be involved in some kind of community work because we've been involved all of our life in various service activities, and the Lions Club and the Grand Strand Water and Sewer Authority at one point in time, back in this airport commission, and I would have occupied my time in some public service way. And the Scripture teaches us, to whom much is given, much is required. And I've been so fortunate and so lucky in business still. I just have a guilty complex. And I just need to return some of God's graces to me, and public service is an outlet, and I would find a way to do that.
Those are great words, Dick. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Senator Dick Elliott coming up next. His middle initials should have been P.S. Think about that. Public service, everything he talked about. Did you catch him using the word we when talking about himself? Did you catch him using the word we? He represents so many folks in this large 100-plus mile district. Think about that. Down in Oree, going up through Marion, through Dillon, into Marlboro, almost touching Chesterfield County, a very large territory, but 4 separate communities that he'd served: that Ocean Drive Beach City Council, Horry County Council, the State House, and then the State Senate. One of 7 children, having 3 of his own. You heard him talk about almost 5 decades of marriage to his wife, Ann. A lot has to happen over time, and the expansion in this area. We didn't even get to talk to him about co-owning a golf course and the other exciting aspects of business life there. Wanted to get into that. You'll have to catch him. Give him a call, 249-1449. That's 249-1449, or send him an email at de@scsenate.org.